I am the Senior Advocacy at PAVE, and really my job tonight is just to get us kicked off around logistics. So you can already tell this meeting is going to be recorded, so we will follow up with the recording in a follow-up email and share the recording with all of our attendees. And I just want to make sure we're clear on logistics for the evening. So this is our Vote for DC Kids Candidate Forum. PAVE, or Parents Amplifying Voices in Education, is really grateful to be co-hosting tonight's forum with KIPP DC. And I just want to do full disclosure, both PAVE and KIPP DC, we are 501c3 organizations, so we do not endorse any candidates. Our whole goal for this forum is to make sure that parents, students, community members all have access to information about candidates' positions, so that for those who are eligible to vote, you can make an informed choice when you come to the ballot and you can understand where candidates' positions are around education. So we are excited to host this conversation tonight. It is more critical than ever for folks to get engaged around education. And we've got some folks who are going to open us up with just some opening remarks to set the tone for the evening. And then we have a few prepared questions from both KIPP DC community members and PAVE parent leaders. And then for the time that we have left, we will shift over to questions in the chat, and I will work with my partner, Carlo at KIPP, to make sure that we get as many of those chat questions answered. So we might group a couple of together or aggregate some similar questions and themes. So if you don't hear your question asked exactly, we are doing our best. But what we will promise to do is any of the questions that we aren't able to get to tonight, we will aggregate those and send those over to candidates if they are interested in responding, and we will share those back out with attendees. So quick logistics on our end in terms of the format for this evening. Every candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks. And once we get to the questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. We'll leave it up to the moderator's discretion if we want to allow for a 30-second rebuttal based on candidate response and let another candidate follow up. And you will see a timer in the corner of my screen, as well as the right-hand corner of each of your individual screens to help monitor time. And so we just ask, the last thing I would say is just that we ask for everyone, we encourage you to engage in the chat, share your opinion, share your questions. We just ask that everyone does so respectfully. We want to make sure that we are focused on kids and families in this forum, that we model the respect we want our kids to have for themselves and for our city. So we encourage civic debate, but just keep the conversation respectful in the chat. So with that, I will make sure, I think my team, the PAVE team, is dropping those Zoom norms and expectations in the chat for everyone to see. If you have any questions, please let us know. But without further ado, I want to turn it over to a KIPP and PAVE parent leader, Shani Arojolaju, to get us kicked off for tonight and share a little bit about the importance of Vote for DC Kids. So Shani, I'll turn it over to you.
There we go. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Like Carrie said, my name is Shani Arowolaju, and I'm both a proud PAVE PLE board member and advisory board member, and a KIPP mom and a KIPP board member. So thank you so much to both of you organizations for making this forum possible, and for bringing parents into this, parents, caregivers, and community members into this forum. I can't stress enough how important it is for the community, parents, and caregivers to have an opportunity to speak to the individuals who are vying for our votes, who will be making those decisions that will affect the lives of our children, how they matriculate through our public school system, and as well as move on to be successful and fruitful adults. I think we as citizens of the district also need to know how important it is for us to speak up for those children who do not have the right to vote. And that is what our job is to do. That's what these elected officials are wanting to be elected to do. And I think it's important that we spend our time together tonight to just listen attentively, engage respectfully, and make sure to go out and vote on election day. So thank you all for coming.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shani. We appreciate you. And now I will turn it over to Shannon Hodge for some remarks from KIPP.
you. There we go. Good evening, everyone. As Carrie said, my name is Shannon Hodge. I'm president of KIPP DC. And thank you for joining tonight to learn more about the candidates in this year's DC Council election. Thank you also to PAVE for being such a great partner in lifting the voices of parents in advocacy. As you all know, this year, 6 members will be elected to the council, and the council serves such an important role in ensuring the quality of our schools and communities, with everything from safety to school choice to funding equitably and to teacher retention. These are all things that the council can and does weigh in on, and it's important that you hear from them what you need to make the best choices for you. Tonight, you're going to hear from the candidates running for the 2 at-large seats, and I encourage you to ask them tough questions, listening closely to their responses, and decide for yourself who has the vision for DC schools that most aligns with your community's needs, and then spread the word about the importance of voting. As Carrie mentioned, KIPP DC is a 501c3. We do not support candidates for public office, but we do support an informed electorate and elevating the voices of our parents, students, and caregivers. Thank you again for this co-hosting this with us, PAVE. Thank you to everyone for attending, and we look forward to your activism and engagement in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. And I think that brings us to our candidates and our opening remarks. So we'll get everyone spotlighted. And Carlo, I will turn it over to you to make sure we're going in the right order. So thanks, everyone.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Carlo Silbiger from KIPP DC, and excited to be here with all of you today. And thank you to all the candidates for coming and joining us. Really excited to hear from you. And thank you to PAVE. And to Carrie for getting us started. So without any further ado, let's get going. So as Carrie mentioned, every candidate's going to have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and share a little bit about why they're running and why they should deserve our vote. And we'll start with Rodney Red-Grant.
Thank you so much to everybody who joined tonight and putting on this great forum that is much needed. I first want to thank everybody because our young people are the most important people in our city right now, and we got to make sure we cover them. My name is Rodney Red-Grant. I'm a Southeast DC native and a DC community leader. I'm a father of 3 beautiful daughters and a grandfather of 2 beautiful granddaughters that call me Papa. I'm also a husband to a retired police officer and first responder who happens to be a Hall of Fame basketball player and superstar. People always ask me, why should they vote for me? And I tell them, because I'm already doing the work that a DC council member should be doing. I'm already the chair of public relations to bring back vocational education to Washington, DC schools, teaming up with organizations like Black Women for Justice to make it one of the most prominent vocational systems in America. Me and my wife, Noelle, have started 2 community programs. One, Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras, where we teach young people filmmaking from thought to theater, and Beyond Your Block, where we take young people off their block and expose them to a new world. We've taken them to the African American Museum, the White House, and the Commanders games, investing real time and energy and love into our young people. Vote for me because I'm reachable, I'm accessible, and I'm engaging. My opponent has been on the council for the last 7 years. He keeps pointing out how bad things are in the city, blaming everyone else for it. This is the year for accountability because he's a part of the problem. We can hear all the stories about how people are getting the job done, but we can see with our own eyes the inequities and inequalities that are in our cities and our communities. We need a community approach to supplant and work with the DC Council, and I bring that approach to help bring our communities back together. I'm Rodney Red-Grant, and on June 4th, I'm asking for your vote to be your next at-large DC City Councilman. Please check the right box. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Moving on now with Christina Henderson.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening to PAVE. Good evening to the KIPP DC community. I'm Christina Henderson. I'm one of the at-large council members, and I'm running for re-election. This forum is focused on children, and I just want to talk a little bit about what I've done. I have been grateful to have worked with PAVE since my very first year on the council on a variety of different issues, and also work with KIPP as well as the charter school community on some of their priorities and issues as well. One of the things that you guys said was a priority area a number of years ago was out of school time. And that's something we've tackled together. Introduced legislation around special education for out of school time, because that specifically was an area of need where we have a number of young people who don't have choice when it comes to out of school time opportunities, but we have a number of CBOs who have been asking for help and haven't been getting that help to provide accommodations that allow for them to serve all students and, you know, hashtag recreation for all. In the same vein, in terms of out of school time, I heard from parents that they hated the signups for DPR, the process of having to be there at noon. Well, I think today we had to sign up for aquatics. So noon to one day, one time. I don't believe that every time we do something, it has to involve legislation. So I work very closely with DPR. And now we have a new sign up system for DPR summer camps where you have 2 weeks to sign up. And so far, I haven't gotten any complaints. This is the second year that we've done that, and they've refined and they've retooled that. We've increased investments in out of school time overall. One of the other areas, issues that used to be a priority, and I think still is a priority, but was one of the top priority areas, was around school-based mental health. Particularly, we heard from a number of charter schools about the vacancy rates. While the council has been putting funding into the school-based mental health program, trying to recruit clinicians and retain clinicians for that program has been something that we've struggled with. And so we heard from schools, let's be innovative. Can you give us the money and let us recruit? And I worked with the Department of Behavioral Health, and we were able to launch that pilot this year. We have 7 charter schools who are participating in that. And we have more clinicians in the classrooms and in our school buildings who are helping our young people. I'm running for re-election because I feel like there's unfinished business for me to do. There's still some ideas that I still have to work on, and some policy issue areas that I feel like I want to see happen in the future. And so I'm not on your ballot if you have it already. I'll be on your ballot in November, but I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to the questions you have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Moving on now to Kevin Rapp.
I think you. Got it? Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks to KBC and KIPP for having us, and to all the.
Kevin, I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to hear you. Any way to get a little closer to the microphone?
You want to circle back? I'll grab a headset.
No, not really.
Kevin, I think we'll go to the next.
So yeah, I was just muted.
Oh,
and
that's good. Go
I
ahead.
couldn't unmute myself. So thanks for having me to KIPP and PAVE, and sorry for the little bit of a technological delay there. I'm a 6th-generation Washingtonian. I am Nicole's husband and Serafina and Merrick's dad on the DC Public School dad. I'm also the grandson of a DCPS teacher and the founder of a nonprofit organization called Bike to the Beach that raises funds and awareness for children with autism and disabilities, as well as a former Pee Wee football coach. So that's just the background a little bit to let you know about my understanding of children, early childhood education as a whole. I also, during the pandemic, had instant twins. My daughter was 18 months old, and we brought on and fostered a child with special needs for 18 months with daily in-home treatment and 3 days a week at children. So when we talk about the pay equity funding and the importance of dollars going into early childhood education, I am very aware of that pivotal age from 1 to 3 and then even up to 5. So that will be a huge concern for me, talking about funding, looking at ESSER expiring on September 30th. We're looking at $600 million of federal funding that is going away. And we're also looking at $300 million that were initially scheduled to be cut by the mayor in the budget. And it looks like we may have found a way around that. We've heard a lot of talks about, recently talk about safety in the schools. That's paramount for me. I'm out every week in different neighborhoods, talking with kids, talking with parents, being an understanding. Councilmember Henderson mentioned the importance of after-school programs. I appreciate the work that she's doing with technology. I would like to continue in that light, improving our technology. And I'd also like to combat truancy, which there was some discussion about that yesterday on the council as well. I mean, there's many ways to do that. One of them that we've seen is an optic way, potentially. So we've seen outside New Year's an open air drug market, and it's an open air drug market 365 days a year. But the council passed some legislation to make certain areas open air drug markets for 5 days. Now, why I bring that up is it did help to reduce crime. And if we at least say that we're going to start holding parents accountable for truancy, there might be some type of that happened with our vice president. It's one of the biggest accomplishments that Kamala Harris had was by verbalizing that they would prosecute families and parents for truancy. The numbers actually went down without ever having to take literal action. So we just need to bring the conversation to the public and to the community. And I think I can help with that aspect.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up is Patricia Iguino.
Hello. Thank you so much to PAVE and KIPDC for the invite and for doing the hard and very important work in order to bring parents to the table and help our kids grow into the responsible and wonderful adults that every child should be. So my name is Patricia Iguino, and I want every single one of you to picture this. A little child who grows up hungry, a little child who was raised in an abusive household, a little child who has trouble eating because that person grew up in poverty, a child that does not have the adequate resources to get mental health because their parent doesn't have that income, doesn't have the resources to provide that income and the help that that child needs. Picture a child that has been abused over and over by society, and that child had the resources miraculously to one day move to the United States, get an education, go to graduate school, and go to medical school. That little girl's me. So I don't have to imagine a child that's lived in poverty. I don't have to imagine a child that doesn't have the resources to get adequate mental health because they're raised by an abusive parent. I don't have to imagine not having adequate food and growing up in a terrible home, in a terrible environment. So I am running for council because I'm not this privileged person who grew up in a make-believe castle. I am someone who would lay it all on the line to provide and help the people of DC. And I can say it from my own background in medicine, as someone who, as I mentioned, went to graduate school and medical school. and who has provided COVID relief support as a scientist, and who has done medical research on neuroviruses. And as someone who has had all those challenges, I think that DC needs somebody who actually has lived through those experiences and knows how to get out of terrible environments that our kids currently have in the most poverty-ridden portions of our city, because I know what it's like to be that.
Great. Thank you very much. And finally, Robert White.
Good evening, folks. I'm at-large Councilmember Robert White. I'm excited to be with you this evening. Thank you to PAVE parents, one of my favorite groups in this city, for hosting. I appreciate the work that we've done together over the years, including fighting successfully for more funding for out-of-school time programs. Thank you to KIPP, largest charter school in our city. I've had the honor of being your commencement speaker. I am excited to talk about education and young people. Education is an issue that is very personal to me. When I was a student in my early grades, I was really an average student. In the third grade, I lost my mom to breast cancer and was in a near fatal car accident within 3 weeks of each other. So in the third grade, I fell far behind my peers, and I just could not catch up. I failed every single grade from third grade until my junior year in high school. Now, during that time, it won't surprise you, most adults, including many of my teachers, counted me out. In my sophomore year, my guidance counselor told me I would never go to college. But 4 years after that conversation, I was halfway through college and leaving to study at Oxford University. I finished college, graduated from law school, and went to Capitol Hill to be a voice and a beacon for folks like my family, the type of folks that have been left behind in DC generation after generation. I left Capitol Hill in Congresswoman Norton's office with no backup plan to run for the council because I believed that I could make more of a difference there. I'm now a dad, as you all saw, as my girls just got home. That is my most important job. But as I look at my little girls and what I want for them, as I look at my prospects when I was a child and what I've been able to do with my life, it informs the work that I do. I know that if I can do the things that I've done because of education opportunity, the young people in our city can do more if we provide them the opportunities. That is why I fight so hard. My 2 terms on the council have been consequential. I worked on the biggest expansion of early childhood education in this country that is relevant to education in every grade after early childhood education. I'm in the midst of a full reform of the DC Housing Authority, which is decades overdue. I've created a free master's in social work program so that we have more mental health supports in our city, including for our young people. I'm working on the biggest expansion of vocational education we have ever seen in our city and a city-wide network of mentors for young people. I'm fighting fights and winning fights for SNAP, for emergency rental assistance, the basic needs that help our students live stable lives and perform better at school. And now we're working on truancy as well. We have a lot more work to do, but I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done, and I'm asking for your vote so we can continue to get things done.
Great. Thank you, and thank all the candidates for your opening statements. We're going to move on in a moment to questions. And just a reminder that the first 3 questions are going to be from PAVE parent leaders and from KIPP DC parents. And then we're going to move on to questions from those here. So if you have questions, if you're attending tonight and you'd like to ask questions of the candidate, please add them to the chat so we can get to those momentarily. And also a reminder to all the candidates that you should be able to see a timer in your screen that's counting down. And if you're able to wrap up your comments before it gets to 0 or very close to then, that'll allow us to get to some more questions and will be super helpful. So first up is parent Elizabeth Reddick with a question for the candidates. Elizabeth, are you there?
Sorry,
Aha.
I was having a hard time.
No-
Yeah, sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you for sure.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So my question is, we are having many conversations about equity in education and specialized school programs. Friendship's public charter school has modeled for us establishing equity by offering AP classes access across the LEA. That means regardless of what physical campus a student attends, students will have access to the same AP class/curriculum in a hybrid or virtual model needed to reach their academic goals. What is your commitment to supporting and funding innovative successes like this, not only across DC public schools, but to include the charter spaces as well?
Great. Thanks so much for that question. And Robert White, you're up first.
Elizabeth, thanks so much for the question. Good to see you. Look, I believe that no matter where our young people go to school, they should have access to the best classes. That includes AP classes. We have phenomenal schools across our city, but we have a few schools that really take many of our students who are identified as academically talented, but that's not the full universe of academically talented students in our school. Utilizing things like technology to make sure our young people have access to AP programs is something I fully support. In addition, the students who don't plan to go to college and want to access vocational education, it should not matter which school they go to. They should be able to get into the vocational education program that they believe will work best for them. We have to leverage technology. We have to leverage resources. I will make sure that we are doing that and doing that to the best of our ability with funding and utilizing technology.
Great. Thank you. Rodney Redgrant.
Thank you. Great question, Elizabeth. We must be realistic here. You know, the world has changed. Young people today do not have the same interests as we did when we were growing up. We need to update the way we educate our young people for more innovative ways that they can relate to. And when you speak about, you know, AP classes, you know, that's something that we have to be able to offer and be able to fund at all times, because higher learning is everything. And equity in education is at the forefront of my plan. So we got to continue to do that. But also, you know, in itself, we got to bring back, you know, vocational education to our students that need it, that don't want to go to school and want to become self-sufficient entrepreneurs. So that's the key to life too. And we got to attack this truancy in our schools. You know, some kids are not going to school for the fact that it's boring. You know, we got to get innovative ways so our kids won't be bored anyway. That's why I'm bringing back, you know, filmmaking to Washington, D.C. That's why I've started Don't Shoot Guns, Shoot Cameras, and put it in Eastern High School, Dunbar Senior High School, Johnson Middle School, because it's offering skill trainings like videography and audio engineering and gaming and coding and cybersecurity and farming to our young people. You know, some of our public schools have reached the highest 80% in truancy, and we got to make sure that our kids are in school, and we got to meet them in the middle so we can re-engage them and give them a path for a better future.
Great. Thank you so much. Next, Christina Henderson.
Thanks, Carlo, and thanks for that question, Elizabeth. I think this is one of those important pieces as we talk about when you talk to students, particularly in the high school grades, they're looking for a rigorous course curriculum. And I remember when I was a staffer for the council a few years ago, this came up where some schools were offering AP classes, some schools were not offering AP classes, and we really worked to bring equity across the board. One of the things I'm really excited about is the investments that we're making into the Advanced Technical Center, which the first location has already launched. It's a place where students from across the city can come to take classes, technical in nature. and take advanced coursework that may not be offered at their home campus. We are funding a second location, and I'm really excited that it's actually going to be focused more, or we'll have more coursework focused on the health professional fields, because this is a high needs area for us, whether it be nursing or otherwise. We also just lowered the age to become a certified nursing assistant. And so the new ATC Center will offer coursework in order for students to be able to graduate with both your diploma and a certification that will allow for you to work in the summertime and then continue on. We heard testimony from a number of people who, in fact, one director of nursing at a nursing home in the district. She started as a CNA. She went back to school, became an RN, and then worked her way up to now being the director of nursing. So there's lots of paths that are there. And I'm looking for ways of how we connect students to that advanced, rigorous opportunity, but also connecting them to careers. Not only that's going to be a ladder for them in terms of pursuing professional goals, but also addressing some of the really critical employment challenges and needs that we have in the district.
Great, thanks so much. Next up, Kevin Rapp.
Hopefully you can hear me a little better now, switch to headphones. So absolutely, 100%. The more we can do to get our kids into higher levels of education, into AP classes. I'm sitting here as a 40-year-old man and running for citywide office. And I had one teacher who believed in me, looked at my test scores. I was a little bit in kind of Robert's situation in school, or Councilmember White. And he put me in an AP class. And I still remember that. I think about that all the time when I'm thinking about education. And when we look at the hybrid versus virtual, I'm definitely more so on the hybrid side. I think we need to find ways, if there are kids from different areas of the city, to transport them, to get them in person. We've seen during the pandemic what happened when we had kids doing virtual learning, students doing virtual learning, the effects on that socially, emotionally. So I'm very, very big on in-person education. But yeah, 100% all for giving increased funding to have the best levels of education we can have in the city.
Great, thanks. And next, Patricia Egino.
Thank you so much for your question, Elizabeth. So my commitment to education, to a more hybrid version of education is, so I understand on some levels that some kids do not do very well in school and need more leniency when to fit every education demand that they need, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, although it's still going on. And there's some other infectious diseases on the horizon. Speaking as an infectious disease researcher, I know that it's extremely important to always have that option for children for hybrid education, and for to increase the funding for a more technologically enhanced education, because the laptops that kids have been given during the pandemic, they didn't run well. They basically, I've seen those computers, they were not great. And there were so many problems and issues. So I'm for every student to get the best education that they need, hopefully in person, but I also understand that that might not always be possible. And I also want every student to get to class if they are able to, including students who have disabilities. And OSSE has basically dropped the shoe on that. There have been so many complaints from parents saying that the buses don't arrive on time, that there's little communication regarding changes on busing. And I think that needs to change. The fact that kids can't get to class, especially in populations that don't have the best public transportation to get to class, that needs to change. It's a very systemic issue citywide.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Thanks to all the candidates for your responses. We're going to move on to our second parent question, and this is from Christine Miller.
Thank you. Sorry, I had an unmute issue. First of all, I just want to thank all of our candidates for being here. These forums and the conversations that we're having throughout this campaign season hopefully will not be one-offs, in my opinion. And I think from our experience, this is how we foster the solution that comes from a variety of voices and ideas. So I really hope that we can continue this dialogue, that everybody is listening to the other candidates long after the polls close. I'm a Ward 1 resident. I live in Columbia Heights. It's an area that has seen a 39% increase in violence over the last 3 years, with several schools in the heart of it. Like most, I'm deeply concerned about making sure that safe passage and that we have continued safe passage and safe blocks in our communities. So my question to you, and I'm happy to also drop this into the chat, is what specific strategies and initiatives would you propose to ensure that safe passage and the creation of safe blocks, particularly as we think about all of our students who have to cross neighborhoods, wards, and the city to find the programming and schooling that works best for their child? I think, to speak to Elizabeth's point, not all of our kids have access to the programs that are right for them, right where they are. Additionally, I would like to ask, and not to compound this, but how would you support and enhance a broader safety ecosystem that includes community policing and, more importantly, collaboration with our local organizations to foster a secure and really a welcoming environment for our young people and, of course, all of our residents?
Great. Thanks so much for that question, Christine. And Rodney Red Grant, why don't you go first?
Thank you so much. It's very important that we maintain our community right now. I'm a Washingtonian by heart, was born and raised here. DC General Hospital birthed me with a redskin blanket on my back. So it's very disturbing, especially when you come through the 80s and see how the crime was in the 80s and how we've caught up again in the 2020s. And we have to put safeguard in place for our young people to get back and forth to school, especially when it comes to our metro system. Because I rode metro to school, to Dunbar Senior High School, and it was a safe environment for the most part. Now it's not a safe environment for kids to go to school. So I want to put laws in place and initiatives in place that protect our young people going to and from school. Our safe passages have to be get stronger, because we have incidents like Dunbar Senior High School the other morning, which is my alma mater, drive-by shootings, and we can't have that when our young people are just trying to go to school and get an education. That's why when people talk about the legislation they're putting in place, I always ask, is this legislation effective? Because, 71 shots rang out on Spring Road the other day. A 3-year-old got killed the other night. And we got to make sure that these things are not happening. So I want to continue to not only foster great relationships with our community and the community policing. I speak with my wife all the time, who is a retired police officer, and we speak about how we can bring better community policing involved, bring POW programs back like police activity leagues, get our young people involved, 14 Boys Club and the boys clubs that used to foster relationships with the police and the community. So we have to bring these things back and put them in place, and we've already started making these moves.
Great. Thanks so much. Next up, Christina Henderson.
Awesome. Christine, thanks so much for that question. And it's such an important one given the environment that we're currently in. I'm going to try to fit in as much as I can in a short period of time. So the first thing I would say is that we have to better talk to each other. Right now, we have a system in place. If something goes on in a neighborhood, DCPS gets an alert, but charter schools don't. even though they might all be clustered together, which I feel like is a very basic step one. The other part too, I have made some comments in hearings that have maybe rubbed people the wrong way about the Green Vest system or the Green Vest Safe Passage program. And it was actually through that I learned more that we posted individuals outside of schools in these metro centers, but we never connected them with actually the administrators who were in the building. They didn't even know who these folks were. I had a meeting with a group of students from Black Swan Academy the other day. We were talking about safe passage, and they were saying, the folks in the Green Vest, they don't do anything. And I explained to them something that I learned through this process is that their job is actually not to engage. Their job is to observe and to report. That's a brand new thing that I don't feel like everybody knows, but how can we enhance that? How can we make sure that folks are talking to one another, particularly in those cluster areas where you have lots of different school communities that are going on? The other part of your question that you talked about was around enhancing the ecosystem. And one of the things that I have been trying to talk a lot with our middle schoolers in particular is that we really do a great job of out of school time for elementary school. And then somehow when you reach 6th grade, we're like, you're good. And when you look at the data, the hours between 3:15 and 7 o'clock are our times where we're seeing the highest spikes in crime. And a lot of that is around just idle young people who aren't necessarily interested in sports, who aren't necessarily interested in, some of those athletic things, but might want to be a part of a gavel club and learn public speaking or work on a school newspaper or those other types of things. So how can we invest more money into our schools so that they're developing out of school opportunities for our middle school grade students? Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Next up, Kevin Rapp.
Well, this is perfect to follow up Councilmember Henderson there, because talking about better communication, she's spot on there. It's so key, both with our technology and not just with our technology, but letting people know about that technology, letting people know, not for schools in this example, but for our police. There's an incident, you can text 50411. That needs to be a habit. Also learning about, I just learned a little bit about Safe Passage today. I meet with different members of the Safe Passage team. I'm right around the corner here from Dunbar High School, and I chat with them all the time. And I was wondering exactly what they're doing. And I did see that they didn't engage with the students. So that was very helpful. And to further on that, I think they need a little bit more supervision. I think we need to take the individuals with Safe Passage that are doing a great job and maybe see if we can bring them to a new location and be a supervisor or something along in that regard. The Safe Passage teams are made up of friends typically who are kind of hanging out in gaggles, and sometimes they're not fully paying attention. At least that's what I've observed. When Christine mentioned Ward 1 and 39% increase in violence, one of the things that I'm really working on bringing to the table is getting out. And I do that in a lot of ways. When we talk about communication, I'm communicating in person, and I'm also communicating via social media. I had social media off of my phone for several years, but as I started digging into campaigning and becoming a representative here, I put it back on. I have a teacher over in Columbia Heights that I'll be connecting with soon. I have individuals all throughout the city who reach out to me and give me some insight into how to connect with kids. Violence is a huge issue, and I know I'm getting cut off here. We need to, with the police presence as well, make sure they're outside of their cars, make sure they're off their phones. I love our police force. I talk to them every day. But we really need to make sure that community policing is improved.
Great. Thank you so much. Next up, Patricia Igino.
Thank you so much for your question, Christine. So a big reason why I decided to run for council was on the issue of public safety. And it's because I feel that the conversation and the DC Council are not doing the right thing right now on public safety. There has been way too much focus on policing and increasing funding for cops and having all this discussion about cops every single day, when I feel that there isn't enough discussion or funding for students and for families that are most dire need, who are struggling to survive, who are about to be evicted or are homeless. As someone who is not only someone who grew up in poverty, but someone who is also a violent crime survivor. I was abducted by a bus driver at knife point. One important thing in consideration for somebody who wants to have an education that is both safe and equitative is, first off, they need a community that fosters them, that is safe for them. And trauma is a big factor into why there is a rise in crime right now, because the executive has slashed funding on the Pay Equity Fund, has slashed funding on housing, ERA, has slashed funding, has said extremely derogatory things about people who are applying for ERA, who have unstable housing. So I think that the conversation needs to move less on policing and more on feeding families and keeping people having a roof over their heads.
Great.
And I
Thanks.
say that as someone also who almost got evicted.
Great. Thanks so much for that answer. And last, Robert White.
Christine, thank you for that question. When I got to the council in 2016, I was really concerned about issues of safety around school. And so I started asking questions and hearings about safe passage. And it didn't move very quickly. So in 2017, I was out doing safe passage myself with a principal at Capital City Charter School in Ward 8. Because they didn't have enough volunteers. In 2018 or 2019, I was invited by, I don't think either of them were on the State Board of Education yet, but Jock Patterson and Brandon Best with KIP DC at the time to do a mile with a student. So I caught the bus and the train with him and went to school to see his experience. Now we have a broader safe passage program, but it's not well coordinated and it's not big enough. And that is a problem because most students in our city cross the city to go to school. So it's not just about what happens in the couple blocks away from your school or the couple blocks away from your home, but what happens all across there. So we need to coordinate more. We need more folks working in safe passage and to coordinate with our violence interrupters. So we have a network. We also can be utilizing regular citizens and volunteers and much better than we are now. Spanning out to the broader issue of safety, there are two things that we have to do well. One is accountability, because if people believe there won't be consequences when you spray bullets indiscriminately in the street, then it's going to continue to happen. So I focus on accountability, making sure our system works appropriately, but also prevention, which is why I focus so much on vocational education, on mentoring for young people, on truancy. So we are catching young people at the earliest signs. We can no longer talk about what we're doing from a PR standpoint. We have to do it well. Community policing has been a talking point. Safe passage for too long was a talking point. Now we have to do these things well.
Great. Thank you. And thanks everyone for your answers to that. We have one more prepared question before we get to the ones from the chat, and that's from parent leader Letitia Vinson.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having this opportunity to pose questions around mental health. And as Ms. Councilmember Henderson mentioned earlier, we all know that there has been a budget increase as it relates to mental health clinicians. However, we have unprecedented times where students are in dire need prior to COVID, but especially now after COVID. And with that, we are still in dire need of these clinicians, although there has been a budget cut. What should the district be doing to increase this access? Are there non-clinicians that could provide tier 1 universal support? And should we use remote clinicians to support our students at the tier 1 level at minimum? to circumnavigate the other barriers and situations around mental health clinicians and ensuring our students have the support that they need. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that question, Letitia. And first up this time is Patricia Higino.
Thank you so much for your question. In order for there to be a more equitable and a more accessible access to mental health support for all students across the district is, first off, there has to be there needs to be health professionals that actually want to be part of the system, because huge problem has been burnout by clinicians, has been also the fact that they do not have a very good wage, because the executive has not done enough in order to build and hire more clinicians in schools in order to meet the mental health needs that students should have. As for remote clinicians, I am for it, but I think that as someone who actually does have depression, who was a child with depression as well, and knows what it's like to have grown up and gone to school with basically no support while having a mental illness, it's extremely important that having the trust with each clinician is like foremost, because trust and open communication is what actually improves student outcomes in terms of mental health. So I'd say that, well, first off, we need to increase the payment for clinicians, and actually have them want to stay in the system, because these cuts have been disastrous on all levels and will continue to exacerbate the problems that we have in our city.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Robert White, how about you?
Thank you for the question. I am, while there are not many things I can say are positive about what happened during COVID, one of the positive things was more societal focus on mental health and normalizing this conversation. And I try to say this as much as possible. I'm a Black man in leadership in therapy, and we've got to continue to normalize this. We don't have enough clinicians. That is the issue I kept bumping into with public safety, with dealing with homelessness, with helping our children. And so to solve that problem, because I don't just stop at the problem, I realized we needed to open up the pipeline. So I worked with UDC to create a free master's in social work program that will go live in a few months. I'm also working to get more social workers, more good folks actively engaging with our young people and our broader issues by reforming what folks who have graduated from social work programs, done their clinical work, but haven't passed the test can do. I'm working with Councilmember Henderson as chair of the Health Committee and with the head of the Department of Behavioral Health. So these efforts are going to get us more clinicians into our city, into our schools to help our young people. On the council, I'm going to keep working to fund more of these slots, but we also have to have the people to fill them. So when we have a pipeline issue, we've got to expand the pipeline. That's what I'm actively working to do.
Great. Thank you. Rodney Red Grant, you're up next.
Thank you. Great question. We all know that a lot of our young people are going to school on a daily basis with mental health issues. We definitely got to get more social workers in our schools that they trust, more social workers that they can rely on, and stop making our teachers do every job, that they already doing enough jobs in itself, but not just being a teacher, they being social workers, police officers, and everything else. So we got to make sure that we give everybody the help they need, but psychological services, we need to get some people help immediately. The intervention will not only reduce crime, but by reducing this crime, we also save public resources. You know, we are not naive, and we understand that some people in society are not going to go to school and do the same things that others, but we want to get them the same help. We want to make sure that they have the services that they need, and definitely remote clinicians that they can trust and rely on. Also, we want to make sure that, you know, our kids not going to school hungry. You know, a lot of times mental health, you know, starts with our kids going to school hungry. And we got to get more services inside of the homes. So when our kids walk out their door, they have nourishment that can take them so they can be a successful student in our city. And I'm going to continue to push for this. I'm going to continue to make sure that our young people have people who care about them. We got to bring back love, care, and respect to Washington, D.C., and we got to bring the right people that our young people can relate to. And I'm one of those individuals.
Great. Thank you so much. Next up, Christina Henderson.
Thank you. And thanks for this question, Letitia. Super, super important. I think, you know, what everyone has said thus far is correct. First and foremost, that's been on our list over the next year. We'll be working with the Department of Behavioral Health to update the funding methodology for the school-based mental health program. It was originally conceived in this idea that we would have a lot of tier 3 cases, which would allow for us to draw down on Medicaid payments, but we have seen an increase in the need for tier 1. And yet we didn't update our funding model for that. The fact of the matter is, when I talk to the chair of the Board of Psychology or the Board of Social Work or otherwise, there are a lot of our clinicians who can make more money in private practice at their house than they can going into a school building each and every day. And so one of the things we've also been working with DBH, while we prefer in person, they have been rolling out a hybrid option for students, so that would allow for the remote work to answer your particular question. Another thing in conversations that we've had a lot of young people who come to testify, some of them actually feel uncomfortable talking to an adult about some of their particular issues. And so we have launched a peer-to-peer student-based behavioral health pilot that trains young people to be able to talk to their peers on the basics, and then also connect them with resources so that they know where to go when they need help. This was the first year that we funded that. Unfortunately, DBH didn't get the money out on time, but we're funding it again for another school year in partnership with the Young Women's Project. They were the ones who received that grant. And I'm really excited to see where that goes. Beyond just what's happening in school, though, to speak to some of the larger issues that we're seeing for some young people, we do have a lot more work to do, not just on the clinician and providers, but also the treatment facilities. Right now, if you have a young person who needs a residential treatment option from a mental health perspective, I think we only have something like 7 to 10 beds in the District of Columbia. And so we need to create infrastructure and capacity here so that families don't have to send their kids to Maryland or to Virginia in order to seek help. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And Kevin Rapp.
Okay, man, there's so much to dig into on mental health and our city and our youth. I'm a little bit scatterbrained because I have immersed myself in mental health being here, and I just was, you know, grabbing a cup of coffee for somebody going through an episode over here. But when Red mentions nutrition, you know, mental health is a larger crisis now than I think it's ever been. We need better nutrition. When my daughter goes to school and she comes back, the one time that she opted for a school breakfast and she says, I want the one with the tiger on the box. That's not okay. We're not doing good enough there. When we talk about the potential that, you know, Councilmember White's doing a great job with that program at UDC to get more counselors, but it's not going to be enough, and that's not his fault. It's not anybody else's fault. We have a shortage. So when we talk about the addition of virtual healthcare, that's a great option to have. Whereas I spoke about hybrid learning and the importance of in-person for AP classes, that's because we have the option to do that. If we don't have an option for counselors, then yes, we need to look at the virtual options, the BetterHelps of the world. I think that basically sums it up. Oh, we mentioned Councilmember Henderson mentioned the treatment facilities. Yes, we need more. We do have some coming online at Children's. We had just approved of some plans to expand their mental health facilities over there. But yeah, if I was on council, and when I'm on council, hopefully mental health will be a paramount issue for me. I care very deeply and passionately about making sure that our children are in the right frame of mind and have the best ability to learn and better themselves.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks to all of the parent leaders who asked questions, really good questions. We've had a ton of questions coming in the chat. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible by combining a few, and we'll see how this goes. So first off, I want to start with questions around making students feel comfortable in school and what we do to sort of make sure every kid who comes to school feels comfortable in that environment. So could you each sort of check in with us on issues around ensuring that teachers and schools are culturally responsive, and also that they're able to support all of the students, including members of the LGBTQ community. And if we'll start with Robert White on that one, once you're ready.
Look, that is of utmost importance. Every student should feel comfortable in school. This requires a couple of things, and this really revolves around investing in our professionals, and by that I mean our educators. So first, we've got to keep good educators, because when we attract and train up and develop educators, we want them to stay here so that they have the expertise, the knowledge to keep students feeling comfortable. We also need to make sure we are investing enough in professional development and giving educators the opportunity to engage in professional development. We have to make sure that our schools are safe, are welcoming, are affirming for all students, including LGBTQ plus students. This also requires broader education of our student population so that they are growing in a way that they understand that all of us are different in different ways, but that doesn't make any of us better than others. So this is something that we should be learning and something that we should be teaching.
Thank you. Rodney Redgrant, you're up next.
Thank you so much for that question. Everybody in Washington, D.C., no matter your background, race, religion, sexuality, whatever you are, has to be protected. Got to put programs in place that protect our young people, especially in our schools. But we also got to make sure that these programs are programs that our young people want to be involved with. You know, education is different right now. So we got to make it innovative for our young people so they want to come to school. You know, a lot of these teachers are teaching some of the same things, but they have no innovative teaching skills. You know, we have to bring back things that we have to bring to the table, things that our kids want to do. Coding is paying big money. You know, cybersecurity right now in high school, young people can start cybersecurity and get money, almost $90,000 a year. You know, we need to be pushing equality and equity on our young people and showing them how they can get it early. You know, my whole thing about growing up in Washington, D.C., I didn't learn financial literacy till I got out of high school, until I got into life. We got to start teaching financial literacy to our young people early in life so they'll know what to do with the money that they do get. And if we're not teaching financial literacy, we're setting them up for failure. It's so many things that are happening, but we also got to make sure our teachers are happy. We got to make sure that we are retaining our teachers and giving them the money that they deserve. You know, they've been fighting for year after year for money just to be teachers. And teachers are the hardest jobs in America. They should be getting money thrown at them, and we should make sure we protect our teachers and our young people so they can be fostering great relationships. And that's what I plan to do. I'm gonna continue to put programs in. I'm gonna continue to, you know, push a Don't Shoot Guns program. I'm gonna continue to push beyond your block, because that's what I want our young people to go, beyond their block.
Thanks so much. Next up, Christina Henderson.
Thank you so much for that question. You know, it's actually, I think we are very fortunate to be in the District of Columbia, where our LEAs, I think, have some of the most gender affirming, LGBTQ friendly policies in place in the country. There's obviously more work that can still be done in terms of what's happening in terms of it on the individual classroom level. But from a school district standpoint, particularly for DCPS, many of these policies have been in place for the past decade or so. And I've been proud to work on that, work on some of these issues more from the health side to ensure that we're doing continuing education so that when a young person is going, that they feel supported and safe. When we talk about the safe environments in terms of a school day, a lot of that deals with what's happening in that building. And some of that starts before the beginning of the school year. We've been looking at a lot of data around truancy and why students don't want to go to school. And some of it is around particular barriers. And then others is around what their interactions are when they are in school from day to day. What we found is that actually home visiting programs have actually been able to help, where you start before the school year starts, sitting down, talking to the student, what are you interested in, what are your goals, and having conversations with the parents as well, so that they feel that everybody is on the same page about the educational goals and outlook for the next year. I think we need to do more of that, frankly, to just ensure that this is a place where everyone wants to be, but also making sure that our curriculums, it's one thing for teachers to have trainings around being culturally responsive and LGBTQ policies, et cetera. I think there's an age-appropriate way to have conversations with young people about their interactions with their peers, whose family makeup might be different than theirs, whose socioeconomic status might be different than theirs, and all the various diversities that come up in a classroom setting and environment. But there's more work that should be done there. And I feel like those are ways that they can be embedded into the school day such that it's not making someone uncomfortable.
Great. Thank you so much. Kevin Rapp, you're up next.
Another loaded question here, and so many things, great points that were made by the various candidates here. So I guess I'll kind of follow up from Councilmember Henderson in discussing truancy and some things that we can do there that might apply. Councilmember White had just introduced some legislation regarding 30 days, getting data 30 days, every 30 days about truancy and reports. I would think we might be able to do that daily. And whether it's daily or 30 days, what we get from that is some great data where we can find, the most important thing is to find the children that are having these issues, the children that are not comfortable, and to work with them. Yes, we need to educate our student body as a whole, individual children. But if there's one single kid that doesn't feel safe in the schools, then we're not doing our job. And that's a very good way to do it. What we can do to kind of further that is when we find these kids that are missing school, we can start by calling their parents. We can call their parents, and then we can also, there's been other jurisdictions that have set up programs. If a parent calls and says, I can't get my kid to school, this seems a little bit outside of the box, but there's the potential to get approval for some of the teachers or other staff to drive and pick up a student on the day that the student can't make it to school. Attendance is huge. We have to be careful not to isolate children for their differences, but we need to be sure that we are celebrating each and every one of our children, every different form that they come into school. Our city is full of diversity. It's one of the things that makes us so great. One of my favorite events is H Street Festival because we have everybody out there dancing to go-go music from wherever you come from. And we need to make sure we have that mentality throughout our school system.
Great. Thanks so much. And finally, Patricia Aguino.
Hello. Thank you so much for your question. As someone who grew up in conservative Bolivia and who is part of the LGBTQ community, I think it is very important, and who had trouble at times communicating the fact that I was an LGBTQ teenager in an extremely hostile environment towards LGBTQ kids, unfortunately. I think the best way in order to foster a more diverse, culturally diverse, LGBTQ friendly space is to actually have teachers who want to be part of the DCPS schools, because right now there's so many teachers that are leaving because there's a crumbling public school infrastructure. There's been so many complaints by teachers about mold, about malfunctioning HVACs, about elevators not working. It's basically a citywide problem in that the infrastructure in our schools is not up to snuff and could be done a lot better. But it's not only infrastructure that's causing teachers to leave. It's also the fact that the budget cuts, again, a lot of the problems that are happening due to teachers leaving en masse is due to the executive, who has basically felt has made a very hostile environment for teachers, for teacher administrators, and we need a more welcoming, more fostering environment for all diverse teachers to actually want to be in DC. But it is extremely difficult if budgets are being cut and teachers are not listened to over and over and over again.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for answering that question. The next question has to do with the budget that you all are working through at the moment on the council, and the city is. And not only is it a challenging budget for DC, but it's also been a challenging budget for WMATA, having to go through the potential of a $750 million shortfall. And we know how important WMATA is to students being able to access their schools and their education across the city. So I'd love to hear from all of the candidates about how we solve this deficiency and how we ensure that this primary mode of transportation for so many students and their families is retained and strengthened. And if there are any other sort of education-related budget issues you want to comment on as well, would love to hear sort of where your focus is when it comes to the budget this year. And Rodney Red Grant, you're up first this time.
Thank you so much. Great question. You know, I'm not on the council right now, so I'm not dealing with budgets, but I want to make sure that when I do become a council member, that the budget is appropriated properly. That's the key to our city. Right now, I don't feel like budgets are being appropriated properly. When it comes to WMATA, you know, I was born and raised here. You know, DC understands the metro is the way our young people get to school, to and from work. And a lot of people in our city get to and from work. So we got to make sure that we put money in the budget that's going to help WMATA be the great system that it is. I think we started some great things with WMATA shutting down on some of the crime and people jumping through the turnpike, but we got to make sure that our young people have free metro. A lot of our young people, they don't have the funds to catch metro. So we got to make sure that they are getting up in the morning, know they got their fare cards, knowing that they're going to get the proper transportation to and from school. But I'm a big proponent on making sure that we appropriate funds properly. I feel like a lot of people east of the river are suffering the most. I feel like our seniors suffering the most and struggling to make ends meet. I believe that our government can't do it alone. I think we need properties in our city to have services, deliveries attached to them, and oversight committees, making sure that the funds are appropriated correctly. So I want to be that council member that is boots on the ground and making sure that I know what's going on and I'm taking care of it immediately, not just passing the buck to someone else.
Thanks so much. Next up, Christina Henderson.
Oh, thanks for unmuting me. Okay, I chair the Regional Transportation Planning Board, so we actually have a meeting tomorrow. So this is top of mind. I think it's important for people to remember WMATA is a 3-jurisdiction problem. It is not a 1-jurisdiction problem. And right now we have a situation where I don't feel like every jurisdiction is paying their fair share. So that's step one. I think also too, if we could go back to the yesteryear when WMATA was created, we should have set up a dedicated funding at that time. Hindsight 2020, we have an opportunity to change and do things right. I've been named to the regional task force through the Metropolitan Council of Governments. So we'll be talking about this issue over the next few months in terms of what are we going to do to put WMATA on a more sustainable path and future. Count me amongst the folks who I'm glad that we were able to find the $200 million to save WMATA this time, but I'm tired of doing these fire drills, if you will. Every couple of years, WMATA, the bottom is falling out. They're about to raise fares to $6 or they're going to cut 50,000 lines or bus stops in order to meet demands. We need more active oversight for the board for WMATA. And I feel like for the last few years, they haven't been checking the books in the way that they should. Nor have the various jurisdictions been asking the oversight questions, tying their funds to particular outcomes and things. I think at the end of the day, I want to get us to a model where we say to WMATA, this is the amount of funding that you have and you got to make it work. Frankly, that's what's happening in Chicago. That's what's happening in New York and other major cities that have places. And so, I think that we're not going to allow WMATA to fail, but we need WMATA to be on a sustainable path, especially since with the advent of working from home, the way that people are moving is very different. And it took me a long time today to get up and down the road where to the other side of town. And I want to get more people back on public transportation and out of their cars.
Thanks so much. Next up, Kevin Rapp.
Okay, so following up on Councilmember Henderson, and I would have to commend from what I've seen Chairman Mendelson on his workarounds from what he received with the pay equity funding and his, it seems to be, ability to solve that. And to Councilmember Henderson, and I believe Councilmember White, for highlighting that issue very loud and clear so that we can make sure that we have that taken care of. And I agree that we shouldn't have that problem. We should figure out ways to have more funding. We should be, Councilmember Henderson's doing a great job by being on WMATA's regional task force. We need more of that. When we talk about 3 jurisdictions, when we talk about being in the shadow of our United States Capitol building, and we're having $600 million that are going to be cut out of our educational funding come September 30th. Are we talking to members of Congress to see if maybe we can get some additional funding? Are we talking to nonprofits? Are we talking to private entities? There's a lot of funding in the capital of the United States of America, and we just have to knock on the door to get it. I have been speaking with some congressional members already. It's a little difficult for somebody who doesn't know them to get meetings, but I knocked down those doors. And what I'm hearing from them is that they haven't had much correspondence with our leadership. And we do have leaders that have experience in Congress. So I would think that there'd be some more communication, and maybe there is. But the bottom line is we need to find more ways to help our bottom line. And I think we can do that. We just need to get a little creative.
Great. Thanks so much. Patricia Aguino.
Thank you so much. I can confidently say that I'm the only council candidate who does not own a car, has never owned a car, and who uses Metro every single day for work and for everyday needs. So WMATA is something that I hold very dear to my heart. Public transportation is has been extremely important, not only in my life, but in the lives of thousands of Washingtonians. So the fact that WMATA has to plead for millions of dollars, otherwise their budget is gonna, they're facing a budget shortfall. I think it's, again, a problem of that the executive had. It's so the biggest reason why we're juggling all these problems, and WMATA has faced so many problems is because of the executive. And I feel that a council candidate and hopefully council member, we need to be much more frank and keep the executive accountable to the fact that her budget that she proposes is always going more towards the richest, to the wealthiest developers, rather than the people that are in most dire need, not only most dire need, but people that rely on public transportation because it in all income brackets. So a way in order to stop the WMATA to actually be fully funded is to increase the taxes on the highest income brackets. And frankly, we have to put more emphasis on other agencies in DC rather than the police force.
Great. Thanks so much. And lastly, Robert White.
Thank you. When you grow up in DC with a single father who works an hourly wage job and can't miss work, you know how you get to school? The bus. And today still, Metro is the primary transportation system for many of our students. So it has to work. The good news for DC residents is that DC is going to pay its share. And frankly, we pay a little bit more than our share. But it is also the primary transportation system for the federal government. And so the federal government, which was a co-creator, primary driver of WMATA, has to consistently pay its fare. So we have to continue to push Congress. When we look at the issue of our budget, one, we have to brace ourselves for the reality that we are heading into a difficult financial period. We're in one now, but it's going to last for some years. So on taxes, we are going to do work to make sure our taxes are equitable. Beyond that, though, we have to improve performance and get more money to where it needs to be, even without being able to raise taxes every year. So here's what I'm doing in this budget that is aside from taxes. I am working to implement a financial performance review. I believe that we can identify over $100 million in inefficiencies and redundancies in our current government system. Second, I'm working to create a sunset commission. So if there are agencies and programs that were created 15 years ago whose purposes no longer exist and we're just putting stuff on them because they exist, we have got to phase them out for the sake of our taxpayers. The third, I'm working with the chairman to create a congressional budget office style office to assist the council with its oversight. When DC got home rule in 1963, we had a budget of $1 to $2 billion and 13 council members. Now it's $20 billion, 35,000 government employees, and still 13 council members. So I want a professional core of auditors who can assist us in doing oversight to make sure you are getting more for your taxpayer money.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to all the candidates for answering all of those questions. We're going to move on now to those 1-minute closing statements before we end our forum. Before doing that, I'm going to ask the candidates, just given the time, to be very careful about the time and try to stay within that 1 minute so we can get everyone out of here on time. And also to remind all of the participants that if you had a question you sent in that we didn't have time for, we will make sure to pass those along to the candidates. And if they choose and are able to provide responses, we'll definitely get those out to you so that you can have your questions answered. So once again, for the 1-minute closing, we'll start with Patricia Egino.
Thank you so much. We need a DC council member that will keep the executive accountable for so many reasons in which she has put developers and the wealthy above the most above most people's needs, above the people that need it the most, such as people that live in poverty, people that are struggling to meet rent every month. I am someone who has grown up in an environment that has been very poor, very abusive, and have been able to become not only a commissioner, but someone who went to medical school and someone who has fought and done a lot of research on COVID. So I think every student needs to have those, to be the best version that they can possibly be, and I'll be that council member that will help them do that. Sorry.
Thanks so much. No, thank you. Robert White, you're up next.
Biggest, most important thing is thank you. Thank you for hosting. Thank you for taking the time to be here. These are our parents and school leaders who believe, like I do, that the most important thing we do as a government is educate our young people. What I hope you've heard from me tonight and in prior debates and in my work is that I'm not sitting on the sidelines. I'm not just pointing to the problems, but I'm getting in the mix and I'm finding solutions. We are fighting fights and we are winning battles. But we are also in a difficult period in our city. When we look at the issues of crime, when we look at where our economy is headed, we need folks who are winning battles, who know how to make things work for our residents. That is the work that I've been doing, and that is why I'm asking for your vote for another term. Again, to PAVE, to KIPP DC, to all the parents, to all the educators who joined tonight, thank you for having me and giving us this platform to talk about our specific work and the things that we're going to do in the future.
Thank you so much. Rodney Red Grant.
Thank Kip, thanks PAVE, thank all the parents who are involved with this tonight. This is one of the most important forums that we had so far. But we got to really ask ourselves, aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of daily communities fighting with one another? Aren't you tired with a communication system between the council and the executive not doing well? Because I am. I'm tired. I'm tired of council members not having a sense of urgency. We got to bring back a sense of urgency to our council, a real public servant, a boots on the ground type of person, type of politician. You know, I'm a philanthropist, a humanitarian, a person who gets things done. And that's what I'm going to be on the council. You know, I see people say he's just a comedian, but I say I'm more, working for Viacom for 20 years, producing over 25 shows for the network, from BET Awards all the way down to Comedy Central roast. You know, I wore the flag, DC flag on my back. So I'm asking you on June 4th for your vote for DC City Council at large. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Christina Henderson.
Thank you to KIPP and DC for hosting tonight. And thank you to all of you who are watching. You worked a long day and then you're here for another meeting. And so I certainly appreciate you. 4 years ago, I ran for the council because I strongly believe that one zip code should not determine their opportunity for success. And I've been working the last 4 years to make that a reality for DC residents in a variety of areas: education, health, transportation and environment, and so many more. I've decided to run again because I believe that there's still so much work to do to live out that creed and to live out what we are hoping for not just your children, but for all of our children. So if you want to visit ChristinaHenderson.org, you can learn more about my campaign and get involved. Again, I'm asking for your vote in November when you have an opportunity to vote for 2 at-large candidates. And so I hope to earn your vote over the next few months. Thanks again.
Thank you. And lastly, Kevin Rapp.
Thank you to PAVE DC. Thank you to KIPP. Thank you to Carlo, Carrie, Shannon, everybody that's attended. Yes, I think to reiterate Councilmember Henderson's words, we have a lot of unfinished business here. And we've had unfinished business my entire life in the city. And I'm looking forward to getting on council and finishing some of that business. Tonight, we talked about mental health in schools. We talked about safety. We talked about kids being comfortable, about funding. All of these issues need funding. And when people ask me, what are your 2 issues or 3 issues for this campaign? I say, I'll give you 2: public safety and education. And that's my main focus. Everything else ties in, but I'm here to help our schools. I'm here to help our kids. You can visit me at rapdc.com or rapthevote.com. I'm running in the general election as an independent.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to all the candidates for participating and for running. We really appreciate it. I'm going to hand it back over to Carrie to close us out.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much to all the candidates for joining us tonight. I know there are a lot of tough questions, and I wish we could have gotten to more, but appreciate your engagement on what we really think is the most critical issue for folks making their decisions as they make their choice on the ballot. So we appreciate your time. Thank you to all the attendees for coming out tonight. And we just want to encourage folks for dropping some information in the chat. If you want to commit to vote for DC Kids to help join the movement, and we welcome everyone to attend our Vote for DC Kids Summit on June 1st. If there's anything else that we can do for you all in terms of follow-ups, don't hesitate to reach out, but we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your Tuesday that doesn't feel like a Tuesday evening. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.